Hi everyone! Gemini is Google's most capable AI model. You can start developing with it in just a few minutes. And in this video, I'll show you the fastest and easiest way to get started with Swift. Gemini has been built from the ground up to be multimodal. This means it can process and combine different types of information, including text and images. As the saying goes, a picture is worth 1,000 words. Sometimes it's just easier to show someone a picture and then ask a question about the picture. And with Gemini's multimodal capabilities, you can ask it questions that are too difficult to describe in words alone. Let's jump in and check out how to get started with Gemini in Swift. To add Gemini to your iOS or macOS app, you first need to install the Swift SDK for Gemini. In your Xcode project, open the Add Packages dialog, paste the repository URL, and then click on Add Package. Once the package is installed, you can import Google Generative AI into your code. Before you can make calls to Gemini, you need to initialize the model. The Generative Model Initializer expects two parameters. I'll first provide the name of the model I want to use, and then I need to provide an API key. You can get yours from AI Studio, so let's head over there to create a new one. You should treat API keys like a secret, so you shouldn't include them in your source code. We've included a handy code snippet in the documentation, which allows you to store your API key in a configuration file. You can then add this configuration file to your gitignore file to make sure it's not checked in. This is super useful when you're planning to share your project with other people. Great. So instead of having to put my API key into my code, I can just fetch it from my configuration file. Now that I've set up my model, I can go ahead and send a prompt to the model. In my app, I've prepared a simple UI that allows the user to enter some text. I want to send this text to the model and ask it to generate a response for the user's prompt. And finally, I want to display the model's response in the area below the input field. For generating answers to a prompt, the Generative Model class offers a couple of different methods. Looking at the code completion pop-up, I can see that two of them are asynchronous. This first one here accepts a single input. That sounds exactly like what I need. Now, you might be wondering what parts representable means. Remember how in the beginning of this video I said that Gemini supports multimodal input? This means we can send text or images to the model, or even text and images at the same time. Parts representable is a protocol defined in the Gemini SDK for Swift. The SDK adds type conformance to this protocol to the string and UI image types. This allows you to pass any combination of strings and images to this method. The user's input is a string, so I can just pass it to the generateContent method here. As I mentioned before, generateContent is an asynchronous method. This means that my calling function will be suspended while it waits for Gemini to return a response. To call asynchronous code in Swift, I need to prefix the call with the await keyword and make sure that the call originates from an asynchronous context. And since this method might throw an error, I should also wrap it inside some basic error handling. Finally, I can assign the result of the call to the UI. Since the response might be empty, I will provide a default value. There are a couple of reasons why the response might be empty, and you can inspect the error to find out why. The GitHub repository contains a sample app that shows how to do this. So now I've got everything wired up, and I can run the app and ask a question. For example, I want to prepare a fresh meal for my family, but I am in a rush. Can you please give me some vegan-friendly ideas? These sound delicious, and it seems like they should not require much prep time. Brilliant! Oh, this actually reminds me of a fantastic bowl I had for lunch the other day, and I wonder how to prepare it. Asking a question about an image is a perfect use case for Gemini's multimodal capabilities. All I need to do is upload an image of this meal and ask Gemini how to prepare it. Let's see how this can be done. In this SwiftUI view here, I've added some UI to allow the user to pick an image from their camera roll. And in my code, I can then pass the image to the generate content method, just like so. Before I run the application, let me update the model name to Gemini Pro Vision. This is the version of Gemini that has been trained for multimodal input. So, let me pick this image of the meal I had, and then ask Gemini, how can I make this? And after a short moment, it comes back with a list of ingredients and instructions for preparing this delicious meal. Awesome. Okay, so that's how easy it is to get started with Gemini in Swift. You can also use Gemini in other languages. There are SDKs for Python, Kotlin, JavaScript, Go, and Node. And if you'd like to use Gemini in a language that doesn't have an SDK, you can directly call the REST API. Of course, there is a lot more to learn about the Gemini API. For example, how to use streaming for a better user experience, or how to use Gemini's chat API. You can find links in the description of this video to learn more, including important topics like safety. Thanks for watching, and I will see you in the next one.